Welcome back, my name is Francois, and today we're going to be going over the types of solar panels, types of configurations, and some of the mounting styles for these solar panels. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your panel sizing. So solar panel sizing comes in two varieties, typically for residential installations. You're going to have your 60 or your 72 cells, and that's really just the individual little cells in each one of those panels. So 60 cells obviously going to be a little bit smaller, it's going to be lighter weight, and usually it's going to have a little bit less power on them. 72 cells are the complete opposite, more weight, more size, but more power. Now the difference between is minor, and when you go to pick one, or if your solar installer is going ahead with one size, it really doesn't matter which one they pick. They'll probably pick a 60 cell if it's going on a rooftop, just gonna be lighter, it's a lot easier to get it up there, but don't stress too much about one or the other. They both are very good panel sizes. Next thing I want to dive into is going to be the technology. So I'm talking here about bifacial versus non-bifacial. And what bifacial means is that you can actually absorb energy out of the back of that panel, or you can produce electricity from the back of that panel, which is really cool. So that allows you to actually pick up the reflection off the ground or of any other elements behind the solar panel. Now, you can get up to, in theory, up to 30% more production out of your same solar panel with this bifacial gain, they call it. But it has to be on really ideal situations. So it's going to have to be doing something with like an angle on a ground mount, and you're going to have snow coverage, and then you're going to get a really good bounce back there. On a roof mount, you're not going to get any bifacial gain. Or if you've got kind of a grassy area behind it or something like that, that's going to absorb that sunlight. It's not going to do much for you. Last but not least is going to be the color of your solar panels. So the standard out there is going to be a blue center with aluminum frame. But we're seeing more and more people move towards an all-black panel. That's really just for aesthetics purposes. Next, we're going to talk about types of solar panel mounts. The first one being a roof mount. The way a roof mount gets installed onto your roof is that a racking system is bolted down onto the roof, and then solar panels are mounted onto that racking. Most common question we get is this going to damage my roof? The answer is no. If you have a high-quality installer and a high quality racking system, this isn't going to damage your roof. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if your roof is getting to the end of its life, make sure that you get that roof replaced before you put your solar panels on. If down the line you do need to change your roof out, it isn't that big of a job for a solar installer to come in there and take off those panels and then put them back on after. About a day's work for each side. Next kind of mount that we're going to talk about is a ground mount. A ground mount's really simple. It's a frame that gets put onto your property and that gets either bolted into a foundation or into the bedrock, and then the solar panels go right on it. The advantages of the ground mount is that it's quite cost effective and that you're low to the ground. That means that you can actually go and clean the panels or check the wiring right then and there. The problem with it is it's going to take up a lot of space, so make sure that you are allocating a decent amount of space for these on your property. The final type of mount that we're going to talk about is going to be the pole mount. So the pole mount is exactly that. You're going to have a pole that's going to be mounted onto a foundation, bolted down onto a foundation, and then at the top of this pole you're going to have either a flower of solar panels or a square of solar panels. It doesn't take up as much room as a ground mount, but it's going to be your priciest option. It is more aesthetically pleasing, but once again, you got to take into consider that added cost to it and the fact that it's a little bit higher up, so it's going to be a little bit harder to clean them off. Last thing we're going to talk about is series and parallel configuration. This is a great tool so that when you're talking to your installer, you'll have a little bit of background on what he's talking about when he says 2S3P or something like that. So there's two different types. There's a series connection, and a series connection, what it does is it basically adds up the voltage of each solar panel. So the installer is actually plugging in the negative terminal of one into the positive of the other to create a string in series of solar panels. So for example, if I had a 3S2P configuration where I had 3 panels in series, so 3S, I would have, and each one of those panels is 40 volts, we would add up those voltages. So 40 plus 40 plus 40, 120. Now the amperages stay the same. So for example, if these panels each had 10 amps, these would all stay at 10 amps. So you'd have a 120 volt system at 10 amps. Parallel is the opposite. So you're going to have connections that are actually combined. So your positive is going to be combined, your negative is going to be combined, and that gives you those two outputs there. And what happens then is your amperages are going to add up, but your voltages will stay the same. So in this example, the 40 volts would stay the same, but the amperages would add up. So in a 2P configuration, for example, we would have 10 amps plus 10 amps, which would give us 20. If we combine that 3S 2P, we would get the voltage from our series connection and the amperage from our parallel connection to give us a 120 volt at 20 amp system. I hope that helped you understand the solar configurations that are out there. Go ahead and like and subscribe, and thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.